95 introduced me to airplanes before I can remember, and we go down to Philadelphia to watch planes, so on and so forth. Recently I was home in Vermont. He's 95 years old, and here's this screen up, and he's watching non-stop landings at London Heathrow, and it's like, this guy is really amazing. It's like, and he's here. This is Noel Philips. He's a self-described aviation YouTuber, has 400,000 some subscribers. He takes cool plane videos all over the world.
Well, thank you everybody for coming out. So my name's Noel Philips. I make YouTube videos. I'm a bit of a geek, and I basically managed to turn being a geek into a full-time career somehow. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what I do, some of the adventures I've had, how I got started, and all that sort of cool stuff. I've made a bit of a video, but I don't think the audio is going to work, unfortunately. But this is effectively what I do. I'm British. Originally, she came by my boys down in Texas, which is a story in itself. And well, it's frozen. But we'll forget about that bit. But this is basically what I do. I make videos. I try and fly around the world on the most random airlines I can. Some cool ones as well. Some really off the beaten track ones. But my story, which is I think why a lot of you are here. So this is where my love of aviation started, basically. I was 11 years old. October the 16th, 1992, this very plane, British Airways Boeing 767, and it took me on a trip, and I looked like this. Wearing the living room carpet, by the looks of it. On a trip, I've got more hair than I have now. On a trip to Moscow in Russia. It was a school exchange visit. And I wasn't interested in going to Moscow because I was 11 and I'd never been on a plane before, and I was just interested in flying on a plane. We get to Moscow, and this is what I am met with when I land. This isn't my picture, by the way, this is just off the internet, but this is what Moscow Airport looked like in 1992. So, as an 11-year-old kid who was kind of interested in planes, you've seen all these cool planes with CCCP written on the tail and Aeroflot in funny writing, and that is kind of what got me into aviation. I was just like, this is just incredible. And I think that's, like most of you all here, I think that's kind of a similar sort of story, isn't it? But seeing these planes basically started me on the track to being an aviation geek. There's me a few years later on a trip to Amsterdam. As you can tell again, full head of ginger hair and a very shocking jumper that I'm wearing, looking like a very big aviation geek. Effectively, through my teenage years, I used to go to airports and do plane spotting and take videos like a lot of you enjoy doing, and it's kind of what got me interested in the whole aviation thing, really. I ended up working for an aviation company when I left school, and this was me again working for an aviation software company in the UK. All of these guys are all plane spotters, and got me even more into aviation. There's me sort of standing up very cheesy at the age of 19 or 18 back in the UK, and it was just a publicity show, just to show what it was like when I worked there. But these guys were all plane spotters, and effectively started to push me even more into plane spotting, going on trips. Such as this one on my first ever trip to the USA back in 2000, and I went to Orlando before I met my amazing wife, and just on my own sort of flight over here to Orlando, and we saw a couple of cool old planes, terrible photos, but this was what I used to do. And then I got back from Orlando and started my course to get my PPL, private pilot's license, back in the UK, and this again is me flying a Cessna 152, which was just amazing fun. I managed to complete my PPL in about 6 months, flying from Leicester Airport in the UK. And then something even more incredible happened, and I met this one. Rachel's preached at the moment.
Thanks for that, Noel.
And I met Rach basically when I was sort of 20 years old, and we ended up getting married and buying a house together, and then all of a sudden you sort of grow up a bit and realise that being a plane spotter and travelling around the world isn't something that is necessarily conducive to a good relationship, and also having a house and a mortgage with a PPL is not necessarily a good combination when you're first starting. So I ended up effectively having to effectively put a pause to that. I don't think I had stopped being an aviation geek. I had to stop flying, and I decided that I just enjoy this sort of website. This is a website I used to be on back in the day. Many of you probably know this website. It's airliners.net. And the forums, as they were, this is me, by the way, 20 years ago, writing one of my very first trip reports that got me into the whole journey that I'm in now. I started writing these effectively. So a trip report basically is it's kind of what we used to do back in the day. It's just a written report about the trips that I used to take. I used to read them a lot. That was how we got into our aviation fix back then. I was reading other people's stories of travelling around the world, travelling to Africa and all these really cool places. And then on the odd occasion I got to fly, I'd write myself a little report like this. Arrived at East Midlands to start our holiday. We had to wait a few minutes for check-in to open, so we grabbed a drink. I mean, it's 15 minutes, it really is. But this is early Noel Philips. This is how I got started. My first trip with Rage to the States when I came to Orlando. We arrived at 9 o'clock for our 12:15 flight. We went to the US Airways check-in desk.
Yeah, because you had to be there 4 hours before.
I had to be there 4 hours before. I was typical. Yeah, I'm sure everybody knows this and knows people like this, so we had to be there hours before. But I used to write these sorts of things, and it was just, looking back now, it's just hilarious because it's like a snapshot into myself 20 years ago. But equally, I guess it's really how I started this whole thing about documenting the travels that I do and reading the reports on Airliners.net back in the day. Well, they were the things that got me fascinated in travelling to Russia and flying on antelopes and flying across Africa to remote cities in Africa because you'd see pictures and things. And before YouTube, it was the way that you sort of enjoyed it. There's me working in IT, and my very boring IT job, looking a bit like But this thing started in about 2005, YouTube. And I swore blind when YouTube started. I was seeing all these really cool videos, and this is what YouTube is for. Skateboarding dogs and cat videos and things. I'm sure you all remember it. And I said at the time, I'm never going to put anything on YouTube. This is for kids. It was like, when YouTube came out, it was like Snapchat is today, right? So, like, the kids are into it. I don't want to part of that. I'm too old for all of that. But in the end, I ended up making a few videos with my trip reports that I did and putting on Airliners.net, and I used to make videos just out of the plane window. And effectively started to make more videos out of plane windows, and eventually I noticed one day that this YouTube channel had started just to host videos. Didn't do anything with it, just literally would upload a video named ing number.avi or something, and that was it. But it seemed to grow a bit of a following, and I ended up looking at it one day and I got like 2,000 subscribers. I was like, what? People are actually subscribing to see just plane videos? And eventually, because this is what my YouTube channel was called at the time, some of you might remember it. It was a little bit boring, a little bit tedious. This is the sped up version, but I used to make videos effectively showing the full flight out of an aeroplane window. So actually, this is tedious in itself, isn't it? This is the sped up version, but effectively it was like an entire, like every video I put was an entire flight out of an aeroplane window like this. So it's just a GoPro stuck to a window, and people watched it. Some people watched it. Very bored people, I imagine. And this was the sort of thing I did. And it grew a following on YouTube, and I got to the point where I got like 40,000 subscribers out of doing this. I wasn't getting any views, but it was a case of people were enjoying subscribing to watch these tedious videos to help them study or sleep or something. And I made a few of them. This was one of my longer ones I did, 8.5 hours. 8.5 hours, this one. Again, like 8 hours of that. Some of them are even worse, trust me, this was one of the more interesting ones. Actually got daylight and clouds on it. But this was the sort of thing I did. And again, people watched it. This video had like hundreds of thousands of views for some reason. But in any case, I started making more of these sorts of videos, and I realised it was a niche, very unique niche. And if we go forward, well, this was the sort of thing I used to fly on. This was one of the highlights when I did those videos. I wish back then I was doing the sort of face-to-face videos I'm doing now, because this was the last ever flight of the Lavia Tupolev 154 with passengers on it into Geneva from Minsk. It was the first time I'd ever flown on a Soviet plane, so I was a little bit nervous. A little bit sort of worried about the whole going to Belarus thing, because even still, like, this was before the whole Russia thing hit, but Belarus even then was a bit off the beaten track. So actually being able to fly and go there, and I went there and it sort of made me feel actually it was quite nice, and flying on this thing was just incredible. That's the view from my window on the plane. You can't see the engine view out of here, but just absolutely incredible plane. The noise that this makes when it takes off is just phenomenal, and it just sort of got me hooked on these old Soviet planes, really. And I got invited to some events and stuff as a result of this. This was the first ever C-Series flight that I was on with Air Baltic from Riga, and the last ever DC-10 flight with passengers on it, which I was on, which has this lovely cabin. I mean, look at that. If you're not feeling it when you get on the plane, you will be being in Bangladesh as a captain, signing my safety card like a true aviation geek, which I've still got hanging up in my office at home, but eventually this happened. And this was the launch of two things. It was the launch of the first non-stop flight from Europe to Australia. It was also the launch of the Noel Philips sort of YouTube channel, as I've got it now, effectively, because I took this flight. It's a 17-hour flight, non-stop, from London to Perth. This was the first ever one. There's Mr. Charles Kennedy, who some of you might have seen speaking here. He's actually got to stand here, but that's when I met Charles for the first time. We were on this flight together, me looking like a thumb. But there's me getting invited to stand and walk around the plane. Anyway, my idea for taking this flight was I was going to make the world's longest full flight video on YouTube. And I did. There's the route. We took London to Australia, 17 odd hours. That's actually gone a bit blurry, but here we go. Where are we? 17 hours long this video was. Again, out of the plane. Most of this video is dark, by the way. This was one of the highlights where it was actually daylight. And I decided I was going to make this video, and because I'd only got the weekend off work, I was going to come straight back again. And I did. On this flight, which was Qatar Airways, the world's longest flight as it was, from Auckland to Doha. And again, 18 hours and 12 minutes, looking out the plane window. But to make these videos, I did it all in like 3 days. Because I didn't get like time off work, basically, and I had to get back to work on Monday morning. So I just thought, well, I'll fly to New Zealand and back in 71 hours. Somebody, sitting in the front row here, my lovely wife, said to me, you want to make a video, like behind the scenes, showing what it's like, just travelling to New Zealand and back in 3 days. And I'm like, why would I? Like, people don't watch it for me, they watch it for these like long videos out of the plane window. Nobody wants to see my face on the video. Nobody wants to look at and see this on the screen. Which is how I felt. But Rich persuaded me to make a bit of a behind the scenes video, and I did. And then that happened. 2 million views. It went viral. And I was like, hang on a minute. People actually want to see that? People want to see my face like flying on planes? It's ridiculous. But clearly they did. And I guess it was that combined with the fact that the full flight videos were just getting tedious and boring. Nobody was really watching them anymore. People were enjoying this sort of thing, watching some guy just fly on planes for 3 days and then get absolutely exhausted and everything. And it sort of persuaded me to rebrand the channel to Noel Philips from In-Flight Video and start making more videos like that. I went to Ukraine and flew on not this Antonov 24, but this Antonov 24 with a motor siege, which I've heard that it's been damaged with all the stuff that's going on there, so that's a bit sad. But this trip sort of made me fall in love with Ukraine, and I made videos flying on these Antonovs, and again they did well as well. People enjoyed seeing me travel to like Chernobyl and stuff, which was just an incredible experience. Got to fly on this thing, Yak 40. one of my favourite Soviet planes to fly on. You see you get on and off up the back like that. 3 engines on the top, it sounds incredible. It's just an amazing plane to fly on. My quest to travel on these unique planes took me to Nepal, where I ended up flying on this is a Xi'an MA-60, which is a Chinese knockoff of a Russian-built plane, or a Ukrainian-built plane, sorry. So you think what could go wrong, but it was actually a really cool plane. That was the flight deck of it. They somehow let me on the flight deck to take some pictures. But when I was in Nepal, I also went to this place. Look like, that's it, somebody got it down there. One of the most incredible places I've ever been to. Right on the side of Mount Everest. It's just up the road from Mount Everest, but it's in the Himalayas. This is the approach, if it's going to play. This was from a helicopter, and you can see sort of the runways here. And your approach is effectively you come in over the edge of a mountain, and then there's just a sheer cliff face at the back. I did take a video on the plane landing, but it wasn't very good, but this is the sort of the better view of what you get to see when you're landing. Nuclear was just absolutely amazing. I stayed at a little hotel there. There was no like heating or anything in the hotel, no electricity, anything like that. It was just literally a little sort of shack at the side of the runway. But again, just an absolutely incredible experience. You get a great view of the runway there when you come to land. I mean, you just think the pilots that fly in there are just, the skill they must have is just incredible, really. But yeah, that's nuclear. I took a flight on this thing, which took me up on, and it basically completed another bucket list item of mine, which was to try and fly to Everest Base Camp, which I did with KFC. I just decided it would be a cool idea to fly and land in Everest Base Camp and eat KFC on Mount Everest, which worked out. You can see this guy is looking for us, does he? So that's there's me, Everest Base Camp, very high box, 17,000 feet up, and using my KFC snack box. And let me tell you, it was an amazing KFC snack box at that height. It just tasted amazing. But that video did quite well as well, and it caught the attention of KFC, who presented me with this oil painting. It's got one of their advertisements. And there we go, that's a bit more detail. You see the six-pack going on. Rachel assures me that's not good, but I like to look at it.
I want to know how the artist knew that you got a six-pack, because it's not there.
It's not there. But that hangs in when they did hang in our downstairs loo in England, but much to Rachel's annoyance, it's now in our dining room, isn't it? It's painted. Yeah, that's one of my most prized possessions, that actually. More Russian planes. So I went to Russia in 2020. I was just chatting to some of you about this actually. This is Kostroma, an Antonov AN-26. Not many of those flying in terms of like passenger capacity, at least. This exact plane's got a really cool history behind it. It's a former freighter converted into a passenger plane, but before it was a freighter, it flew for the Peruvian Air Force, who, believe it or not, used to drop bombs out of the tailgate of the plane when they were at war because they didn't have enough bombers or something. That's the story I read anyway. That's an absolutely amazing plane. It's called the Marshal Novikov, which sounds like some sort of nerve agent. That's what it's like on board, and that was kind of as best as a view as I got, because this was the plane where the flight attendant called me filming, and I made a bit of a video about it somehow. She ended up coming and sitting next to me on the plane. She was like, "You can't film, no film, no film." I was like, "Okay." There was some Canadian guys sat opposite me who were taking pictures and all sorts. She wasn't bothered about them, but she spotted me. So she was like, "No camera, no camera." I was like, "Okay." And then I was like, "Try and take a picture like that." No camera, no camera. Okay. And she ended up coming and sitting next to me. She literally moved from her cruise seat and came and sat next to me to make sure I wasn't making any video. It was really uncomfortable. One of those sort of environments, and at the time you're thinking, I'm exhausted, this is just not working, it's going to be a terrible video, I'm not going to get anything out of this. But actually it turns into a really cool video at the end, because it's like everyone wants to know what's going on, and it works really well. That's a check-in desk in Russia, I like that picture. It's just like the most retro Soviet check-in desk you've ever seen. That's when I filmed this thing. This is the Vologda Yak 40. And again, if you look at the van at the back, this shows, this was 2 years ago, by the way, this picture, so it was obviously out in the 1980s. The Yak 40 is really cool because not only do you get to board up the back, but also you have to carry all of your own luggage on board, which is the baggage compartment's here in the tail. And they don't have baggage handlers at some of these remote airports, so you take your suitcase out to the plane, lift it up the steps, and then stack it on the shelves yourself. I mean, totally not ADA compliant, I'm sure, but certainly close to the Russians. And this plane over here, this was taken off from Vologda Airport. This is the end of the runway, by the way. That's, yeah. The climb rate of a brick. There's a few seconds later. It's an experience. Eventually we managed to get up to some sort of cruising altitude on it. That's a view. You see why I like the Yak 40, it's just such a cool plane. And the other cool thing about them is they deploy the thrust reversers before you touch down as well, which is the most unnerving thing. You're on final approach at about 100 feet and you hear the thrust reversers kick in to slow the plane down before it actually touches down. It's amazing. I mentioned earlier my African things that I like as well as somewhere else I have a big passion for flying is Africa. And I took a flight down through West Africa to a country called Burkina Faso because it's a place that's always fascinated me. I saw it written down on a map once as a kid. That sounds like an amazing place. The capital city is called Ouagadougou. I'm like, that sounds like a party city if ever there was one, you know? I get to Burkina Faso and I find out that actually it's not much of a party city because there's a civil war going on and there's all sorts of advice saying don't go. I didn't mention that before I went, did I, Rachel? I'm sorry. But I got to go to Ouagadougou, downtown Ouagadougou, amazing place. Actually I went and I was scared as heck on the plane on the way over there. I was thinking, what's going to happen when I get there? But like everywhere else I've travelled on these trips, you sort of get there and you realise that everybody's just human and trying to get on, and it's just friendly people, and they want to take you out for dinner, and they're driving you around to see the sights and things like that. Just amazing. I ended up flying on this airline as well from there. A-Sky, they're an African airline. And they did a flight basically from Ouagadougou to Johannesburg. It's about 14 hours on a 737, and it stops off in Togo, the Republic of the Congo, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and then carries on all the way down. It just hops down. Again, the sort of thing I absolutely love doing. That's taken off from Togo. Again, typical sort of West African view out the window. Even another Biman Bangladesh style seat is a bit blurry, that is, unfortunately, but lovely brown seat. There you go, see that. Amazing, amazing cabin to spend 14 hours in. And we appear to have a white screen. Snowstorm, yeah, there we go. Oh, here we go. So this is one of the flights that you do as part of that. This is my flight from Brazzaville to Kinshasa. These two cities are literally on the other side of the river from one another. They're 10 miles apart. It's the world's shortest international flight. And they fly between the two because there's no sort of bridge or anything to get between these two countries. So 10 minutes is like 16 miles. Actually, most of it's flying out and then coming back in again to land. So yeah, that's cool. Oh yes, and this happened as well. So this was during COVID. I mentioned earlier about PPL that I had to stop, and then I started again in 2020. And I went to a little airfield thinking that I'd lost my PPL for good after not flying for 20 years. And I called up this airfield in Yorkshire, England, and said, I used to have a PPL. What do I do now? He said, I didn't get used to. He said, if you've got a PPL, it's valid for life, you just have to keep it renewed. I was like, really? And he said, yeah. 3 hours later, 3 hours of flying in this thing, there's 172. I mean, there's the... for some reason he signed me off at the end of it. There's me and our son Sam, so I flew the PA-28, the Piper Warrior. Christy flies the Warrior as well. And yeah, Christy's been in this plane, hasn't he, as well?
Yeah.
So yeah, Lima Bravo back in England. So I flew the Warrior for a bit in England, got my restricted instrument rating over there, flew a bit more on my night rating, did a few other bits and pieces, and then we moved to the US last year, and now I fly this even cooler plane, Cirrus SR20. I've just started doing my instrument training in that one as well, so there's me been very cool. If I say so myself, flying the Cirrus the other week over to Louisiana. And here we go, this is my route map. I thought before I ask you if I have any questions of anybody in the audience, then I thought I'd show you some of the flights that I've done. I mean, this is where I'm at today. 1,044 flights taken, 968,000 miles, 100 countries visited recently. I just did my 100th, which was Japan, 208 airlines. I mean, I just look at this and I just think it's crazy because I started off as that aviation geek back like 20 or 30 years ago. And for some reason I made these stupid YouTube videos and it's sort of turned into this, really, where I can do this as my full-time job. And it's brought us over to the States. And seeing all of you guys here over the last couple of days, I said to Rachel last night, how did my stupid YouTube videos turn into this? Like, people are actually coming to see me. It's just, I still can't believe it. I think that's about it. Is that the last slide? Oh, here we go. I'm just going to end it on one here before I ask questions, if you've got questions of me. This was when I went to Pakistan earlier on this year, one of my most favourite flights I've done. Right up in the Pakistani Himalayas, and they let me ride on the flight deck on the A320 all the way across Pakistan, which is will never happen here. And it was just amazing. Shameless, didn't have to scan my code and subscribe to me on YouTube. But that's kind of me. So if anybody's got any questions or anything, I'm more than happy to answer them.
So back to the long duration videos. Sometimes, they talk about putting your screen up or down with the window up or down. How did you tape it on? Did you have something, or did you actually hold it the whole time? How do you get the duration? And also get through the flight attendants who may want you to put your.
So the very first one I did, I ended up with very sore arms because I didn't have a GoPro. I had an SLR camera, and it was only an hour and a half flight. The entire flight I held, it's the videos on YouTube. I held an SLR camera against the window of a Ryanair plane for an hour and a half at the beginning, and then I realised I need to do something different here. So I ended up getting a GoPro, and I used a suction mount on the window, and I came up with an ingenious thing actually of using the safety card, like tucked between the window and the bottom that stopped the light coming through. So like those are one overnight flights. The Dreamliner's a nightmare for this, by the way, so that's why one of the things reasons made me stop, because like they dim the windows and you can't get anything out, you can't see anything for like 12 hours of a 14-hour flight, so it's sort of pointless. But yeah, GoPro is attached to the window, power banks, USB power on the planes, depending on which plane you're on, and that was how I did it, really. I had a lot of headaches editing it all together, especially when I started adding in like ETC, or live ETC and stuff, and flight maps from Flight Radar, and putting those overlaid on it as well. It just turned into a nightmare. And actually, these are a lot more fun to make. I actually get to be on camera and do some really cool things as well, and also it's a lot easier to put together, I think, really. So, yeah. So that's that. Anybody else? Oh, here we go. Yeah.
Out of everywhere in the world that you have ate, what is the best food that you've ever had?
I have to, I think Pakistan has some amazing food. India has some incredible food. I'm a big fan of Indian food. I'm British, and it's kind of like it's our institution over there. We have to sort of eat Indian food and things. So I love the food in like South Asia and stuff. I've also fallen in love with barbecue since I've been over here. But yes, we found a few nice barbecue places over here, and we try, and that's one of the things that I'm doing on the flying channel now. We fly somewhere and go and get barbecue somewhere. So it's it's good.
Cool.
You ever get into a situation where you're like, this isn't safe? I'm dodgy airline or plane or safety procedures, and what do you do?
Yes.
Oh.
All right. So a few times I've ridden on planes where I thought, we may have an issue here. If I'm honest, the first times I flew on the old Antonovs and the Tupolevs and stuff in Russia, I was like, these are the flights you hear about on the news. These are the flights that sort of disappear off the radars. And after flying on those flights, you sort of realise that actually they're pretty good and not actually that bad. The worst ones for me is when you're flying on planes and you sort of know a little bit about what you're seeing and you realise it's not good. And I flew in Mexico, on it. I've got one bet for you.
Yeah, yep.
I flew in Mexico on an airline called Aero, and they flew from, I can't even remember where the place was now, but it was from on the coast of Mexico across to Cabo on a Cessna Caravan. And I got into a situation before I even got on the plane because I was driving and I just thought it'd be great to get a rental car and just drive out through the Sonora Desert and just stop to see some of the Mexican desert. Not a good idea. Turns out it's a bit dangerous out there, and I got followed by this camo truck full of guys with guns and stuff at one point. They just pulled out from a dirt track and started following me in the rental car. That was before I got to the airport. I get to the airport and I check in for this flight on the Cessna Caravan. They used to have 2 of these, they've only got 1 now because they crashed one. That's the story of my life. And this guy gets on, he's a young pilot, and I was sitting right behind him. And having a PPL, you sort of kind of know a little bit about like what you're supposed to be looking at. Half the instruments weren't working. One of them was the HSI on the first officer's side, as it would be on the Cessna Caravan. There was just the captain flying it. It's just spinning around in circles. And he's got, the pilot's there, he's got his AirPods in, he's listening to Spotify on his phone, opening WhatsApp, chatting to somebody on WhatsApp. The plane is like supposed to be following the magenta line across there, and we're weaving left, we're weaving right. And I'm like, this guy actually flying the plane. The autopilot was in op, so the sign on there. So he's flying it by hand. We start descending, and I'm like, okay, we should be descending over the middle of the Bar Peninsula or whatever it was. And then eventually the power kicks in, and I'm like, off we go again. Because he's just noticed, oh crap, we need to start climbing. Yeah, it was one of those flights. And honestly, that was one of those, I think for most passengers, they probably wouldn't have noticed that, but somebody who actually flies planes and has flown small planes before, that was a bit unnerving, really, from my experience. But to be honest, a lot of the time you fly, especially, I'm flying on some really, airlines that people would say were really dodgy airlines. And again, Scat Airways, there we go. In Kazakhstan, they fly on 737s, and you fly on these airlines and you realise actually even they take safety pretty seriously. Everybody wants to come home at the end of the day. I very rarely, in all those flights I've taken, I've very rarely been in a position where I thought this isn't particularly safe. Procedures at airports vary depending on where you were. I was in Indonesia last year, and they just left a door open and passengers were just walking through to start going down onto the ramp, and everyone was having to run down behind them and get them to come back. And I'm thinking, okay, that's procedures at airports. Planes themselves generally aren't relatively good, really. So yeah, anybody else? Jump over there, sorry, I'm making you room for it.
Lots of YouTube flight bloggers have established themselves by going on the fanciest business class and first class tickets, but you've sort of made your niche in flying all of these unique, exotic airlines. Was that your plan, or did that just kind of fall into place by you having fun flying all over the place?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So yeah, my hobby was always flying the unique stuff, the random stuff. My first trip was just always flying to Moscow, seeing all of those Soviet planes lined up. And that was kind of where my hobby took me, was to fly on these planes. I sort of realised that going and flying on these planes was something that people might be interested in actually watching. Over the years, I got into a position where the channel's doing quite well, and actually I find out that doing those sorts of videos in first class and stuff can do really well, and can perform quite well on YouTube, but I don't like to do that all the time, because I find that flying on the most dodgy airlines and then going on the most luxurious airline, it kind of keeps you grounded a little bit, which I quite like it. I like the fact that there's a reward there. My reward after flying on Scat Airlines across Kazakhstan for 8 hours is getting on like a Singapore Airlines first class plane to get home or something like that. There's a nice sort of like balance there, you know what I mean? A lot of people criticise in the comments, say, oh, you only ever fly business class. And then when I fly in economy class, people say, why don't you ever fly on first class and in business class? You can't really be. I think that the sort of the unique off the beaten track ones are the ones that got me where I am. I think, if I'm honest, doing some of these videos I can actually do quite well on YouTube, because it gets people that are interested in like different areas of aviation that might not have heard of before, you know. So that's one of the reasons I like doing that. Somebody had any more questions? This chap down here, yes.
Thank you. I just obviously noticed, you've flown a lot internationally and then obviously domestically here in the country. Just curious about if you have any thoughts on the state of aviation in general. Good, bad,
I keep seeing a meme going around on the internet, and it shows a picture of some people flying on an old airliner back in the 1950s or something, with a massive gourmet dinner in front of them. You might have seen this picture. And the guy's saying to his wife at the time, "Gosh, darling, can you imagine what aviation is going to be like in 50 years' time?" And then there's like a picture of a bit of peanuts on a tray table on Singapore Airlines. And I don't actually agree with that. I think that the best thing for me is that aviation has become more accessible. What they're not telling you about in these pictures from the 1950s is you had to have a second mortgage to be able to fly like that back then.
Right.
Nowadays, anybody can book a flight on Spirit for $30. If you want, the luxury is there as well. And planes are only getting more luxurious despite what you see from that. If you pay the sort of money these days that people paid back then, you effectively are going to be flying in a much more higher level of comfort than you are. And I've just come off a Singapore Airlines flight the other week where you have like a suite and a chair and a separate bed that actually folds down. A full-size flat bed. It's not a seat that converts into a bed, it is a bed in your cabin. And you see things like that and you realise actually things, if you want it, it's still there. In terms of like the aviation industry in general, which I'm not sure if that's where you're going with your question, but I do have to say that since the whole COVID thing and everything shut down and the airlines are doing really badly, I kind of am quite impressed with how quickly everything's come back to normal after that, and I think it's incredible. I was over at Delta Airlines a few weeks ago and was chatting to their tech ops manager, who was saying that they, as soon as COVID happened, they lost so much money like instantly, like they got no money coming through the books. But they just ramped up in other areas. They ramped up the cargo flying, they ramped up the maintenance because all of a sudden there's no planes flying anywhere, so they can send them all in for maintenance and get those like 8 checks, 3 checks, or whatever it is that they have to do, get all of those done and Delta coped with it that way. And so many airlines did the same thing, and I think that was the way it all worked out in the end was just incredible, and the way that aviation's come back in the last couple of years. From an airline perspective is amazing. From my point of view, it means I'm on really busy flights again and I can't get the seats I want anymore and it's not really expensive, but for the actual airline industry, I think it's a fantastic thing. So.
I got something here.
Too bad American didn't know about that during COVID, taking care of their planes and stuff.
I know, so nice to meet you in person and talk a little bit earlier, but I have a question. What in the past has been your most favorite airplane or airline to fly on, and which one are you looking for actively now to try to get on before it's history? Because a lot of these airplanes are, doomed to go into obscurity.
Thank you again, another great question. My favourites that I've flown on, I mean, we're not talking about things that I love flying on that are still being produced, I guess like the A350 and the A380, some of my favourite planes to fly on. In terms of the favourite things I've actually flown on, there's 2 that stand out. There's a TB154, I flew on one of those on its last ever commercial flight. The Yak-40s is the one that I fly on, that I've quite enjoyed to fly on. I've flown on the Yak-42 over there as well, it's a bigger version of the Yak-40, but yeah, those things, they're just another league, really. And I guess that's, you go to former Soviet countries, they're like proper built aircraft, they really are solidly built planes, the engines sound incredible, the pilots are all ex-military pilots, so they're throwing it around like it's a fighter jet or something. It's just, from an aviation geek, it's fantastic to be able to ride on them. In terms of what's flying at the minute that I'm trying to get on, effectively I'm just trying to make the most of what's still out there. Really. 737-200s, I've been on a couple of them, nowhere near enough of them, because they're such an amazing plane to fly on. I went to Canada and flew on Air Inuit on their flight up to Burlington in the north of Quebec on the Combi which was just amazing. Trying to fly on one through Venezuela, there's a few airlines there that still have them, but I'm basically trying to get on one again now. We went to Zimbabwe, myself and a friend of mine, to try and fly on Air Zimbabwe's 737-200, and they substituted it for an RJ145, which was, to fly 8,000 miles to fly on it was a bit upsetting, but it's what happens. What happens when you do this. So yeah, the 737-200s, I'm chasing down a Fokker F-28 still flying in Argentina at the minute for the Argentinian Air Force. They fly on passenger flights, so that's one of my hopefully soon flights that I'm going to be doing before that's gone. Turboprop planes as well. I want to fly on a Shorts 360, believe it or not. Square brick shed thing. Never been on one. I just remember seeing one on TV as a kid, and on the inside it looked like the inside of like a porta cabin or something like that. It was just like a square box. And I don't know, I just was like, that's a really cool plane. I want to get a ride on one of those. I think the only way you can do it really nowadays is to jump out of one, which I've done that before and I'm not wanting to do that again. So yeah, I hopefully fingers crossed I'm able to get on one of those soon. I think it's might be one in the Caribbean flying somewhere, so that's, yeah, fingers crossed.
I think some folks here may not be aware that you venture outside airplanes and take some incredible train trips. This guy took a Greyhound bus across the country. How many people want to do that? That was incredible. I think you got stopped halfway because of the ice storm, but your train trips and bus trips have inspired me to want to do the overnight India bus trip and all that stuff.
You need to talk about ferry trip as well.
Yeah, the ferry trips, Rachel just reminded me of the ferry trip I did where I hate boats, so, but they don't have a minibar, it was a free minibar, so that helps me. I've done quite a lot of the trains and stuff. My channel was always an aviation channel, and I've only really spoken about planes today because it's an aviation event. I mean, a little bit into trains. I enjoy riding on them. I don't know much about them. I just know that they're a nice way to travel sometimes. And I like the ability that you can sort of go to sleep on a train and then wake up and be somewhere completely different. Being an aviation channel, I always wanted to make videos doing trains and stuff, but thought that nobody would ever watch them. But actually, it's turned out to be completely the opposite. People seem to watch it because they like the travel element of it. So, which has been nice. And the buses as well, yeah. So I did a Greyhound bus. That was my first ever bus adventure. Not my last. Not my last. I mean, so I tried to take the longest Greyhound bus route from Los Angeles to New York, non-stop, on bus all the way through, like a 5-day trip. And we got as far, 2 nights into this trip, we got as far as Amarillo, Texas, and then the ice storm came and they just kicked us all off the bus and that was it, the bus ride was over. So I am planning to try and redo that at some point. It was, it wasn't a fun experience, but it sort of was, because you get to see things from a different angle, you know, you get to drive Route 66 and stuff like that on a bus, which was just, well, the new, whatever it is, the interstate at the side of Route 66, and seeing America from ground level. The trains have been similar as well, like the Indian train I took a train from Calcutta to Bangalore, which, again, 2-day train ride. It was a horrible train. It was really uncomfortable. Like pouring the floor for your toilet and everything like that. Really not a nice experience. But you get to see the side of the country that you don't see from 40,000 feet. You know, you get to see going through little stations. You get to look at villages and see kids playing football out in the field as you go through villages and stuff. You get to see all this stuff that you don't see from the plane, and that's sort of one of the reasons I like that, really. So.
Absolutely.
I've seen Amazing Race legs from India. The joke among racing car fans is best way to get people that have killer fatigue. Do a leg in India and put them on a train.
Yeah, pretty much. Or a bus, sleeper bus. I did a sleeper bus in India as well. And I was thinking that's a really good idea, a sleeper bus. Like it's, expected to be like a advanced tour bus or something like that. Spoiler alert, it isn't. And it's just, it's just effectively a load of like bunk beds, effectively, with no blankets or anything like that. The roads in India are not conducive to a good night's sleep either, let me tell you. So that was, that was another fun experience. So, what was that? One question, yeah.
You're going to be doing making a video off of the experience here at the airliners convention?
So I've been making a few like photos and stuff like that, putting them on Instagram. Probably won't make a full YouTube video around it.
There's no money.
Because, yeah, I've certainly been posting a lot on Instagram, so I'm hoping to do more events like this as well. So, yeah.
In which country do you find that you're most recognized when you travel through the airports?
Australia, funnily enough. Where I'm most recognised. So I hadn't really been to Australia. Living in the UK, it's a very long way to Australia. It's a 24-hour flight. I found that since we've lived in the States, I've actually been travelling to Australia a bit more. And my last trip there, I was there for 3 days and I got recognised about 10 times in those 3 days. It's just an amazing place. It's like walking around here, like everybody's got to look asking for selfies and things. It's strange. So yeah, Australia is a bit like that. So yeah, how we doing for time? We can do one more. Yeah.
You got about another 3 o'clock? You got time.
We've got a bit of time. Okay,
You want to do
a couple more
the
minutes.
next one's at 4 o'clock.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite country or favorite airport from all your travels?
So in terms of countries, there's 2 countries that stand out in my mind: Nepal and Pakistan. Both absolutely incredible countries. I've shown something. I mean, this is Pakistan, right? It is not what I expected from this country. I expected it to be like India, a little bit of a challenge, you know, and not particularly scenic on the bits that I went to. This is what I saw in Pakistan. The people there, absolutely incredible. Just could not do enough to help me. Nepal is very similar as well. Just absolutely amazing people. And in terms of airports, my favourite airport to go through is Doha in Qatar, because you have a connection there. Regardless of how long it is, there's plenty enough to do. You know, you've got a hotel you can go and stay in, there's a spa that you can go and visit and actually go for a swim or something there on your layover, which is like for me, that's just really cool that you can do all of that. And Singapore's another nice one as well. Singapore has an entire shopping mall attached to it. You can spend like an entire day there just going around restaurants and shops and things and stuff, so yeah. Hey, somebody else?
It's one over there as well.
That way, in a sec.
I'm just curious about your logistics. How do you plan your trips? Do you have a team of people to help you? Range or somebody who plans all this stuff out?
So yeah, I have a team, but I actually plan this stuff myself. The trips I tend to plan myself. Rachel and her family are amazing, help me a lot.
You sit in bed at night going, oh, I'm thinking of going to this place and doing these videos. What do you think?
Yeah, okay. So,
thank you.
So that's that.
What, sorry?
So the way that my trips
Been in a few,
go
not many.
is, I will find a cheap fare somewhere. So for example, a trip I'm planning at the minute, and I'm literally in the really early stages of it. I'm just seeing this week that there's a cheap fare on Angola Airlines, Angola Airlines, from Johannesburg to South America to Sao Paulo. That, you know, for like $1,200 in business class, which is quite a good deal. So that sort of gets my mind going. I'm like, right, what can we do around that? And then I'm looking at it and I'm thinking we've got Zimbabwe in Africa. I could do the South African airlines I'd like to do. I'd like to do Malawi and a few of the airlines in that part of the world. But equally, there's some stuff in South America I'd like to do as well that I did have planned and then cancelled it a few months ago and ended up doing something else. So there's like a few bits in South America. And what I tend to do really is get that kind of key elements of the trip together. Like that's the first thing that's got my mind going, is that flight between South Africa and South America. And then I'm looking at what I can do around that. Can I get a 2-week trip out of this and make maybe 15 videos out of that trip? Which will then get me through 3 or 4 months worth of content to release onto YouTube. And it's about trying to find, you know, sometimes you look at it and you might see there's 3 or 4 videos. That was the reason I cancelled South America, because I've got a sort of 2-week trip planned and I've got like 5 actual interesting videos that I could make out of that, which for me, the reward versus sort of the time away wasn't really there to be able to justify it. However, if I tie that in with the Africa trip as well, then maybe we can, because we can do a bit on either side as well. So it all really depends on what there is to do. But that's kind of how it goes.
There was a gentleman over there.
There we go, thank you.
Go to about 3 o'clock, 10 minutes.
Okay. Give me a sign when you need me to stop talking. I can talk all day.
I've got a two-part question for you. I'm sorry. I just saw recently your Cairo to Doha to Australia video, and you talked about your ground experience in Cairo, where you had to bribe the security agents to get into the airport. Is that something you've seen across other parts of the world? And then my other question is, you talked about how you actually purchased that fare, in that the woman next to you in first class traveling to Australia paid $18,000 for the same fare you paid like $1,500 for, just because you started in Cairo.
Yeah.
How do you go about planning that process and finding those fares at such discounts?
Thank you, another great question. So yeah, the question about tipping to get into the airport, that's the second time it's happened to me. Both times, just coincidentally, maybe in Africa. I flew on FlightLink a couple of years ago, and I flew on the really old battered Embraer in 20, I think it was. And the check-in agent asked me for a gift to check in. And I was like, okay, I'd never been to Africa before. And I was like, I've got Noel Philips stickers, you want one? A sticker. And I wouldn't wait, I'm disappointed. And then the comments started coming out like, he was actually asking you for a bribe or for a tip to be able to check you in. But yeah, and then Cairo was, Cairo's Cairo, that happened. In fact, that has happened to me before as well in Cairo. Another time when I was trying to get through. Because to get in Cairo from one terminal to another, you have to sort of go through immigration and get a visa and everything. But if you tip the guy who's doing the passport control, they'll basically just stick in like $10 in your passport as you're using your passport. They find a guy to basically put you in a car and drive you airside across to the terminal, and you just end up paying them a few dollars to do it. It's how things work in some parts of the world. It's becoming less of a thing, but yeah, it's still alive and well in Egypt and Tanzania, apparently. But in terms of the flights itself and how I got it so cheap, so every day I read a forum called Fly Talk, which is a web forum. They've got a premium fare deals section where people post really cheap flights that they find in business class and stuff. And most of the time for me, they're not particularly interesting to me. It might be like Delta flying like LA to New York in business class for a slightly reduced fare, But then every now and then you see a really cool deal like that. And typically, if you are flying from the North African countries, it's really cheap to fly. If you live in the UK, I never ever want to fly from the UK to the US or from the UK to long haul because it's just so expensive. You fly to Copenhagen and fly from there and you save hundreds, if not thousands, if you're on a business class ticket. And it's just the way you have to do it. It's all dependent on and the weirdest thing is you end up on the same plane as well. So if I fly, I've done it before, I flew, in fact that really long flight that you saw with American Airlines, that was a flight from Stockholm or something like that, and I actually flew on British Airways. So I flew out to Stockholm and then flew British Airways back to London, like the next flight, and then straight onto American Airlines because it was like a fraction of the price of just booking a flight direct from London. Because at the time, Norwegian Airlines had got a low-cost flight going from Stockholm to New York. They were sort of competing with that, and they brought the price down. So that's kind of how that works.
No.
Some deals are better than others.
The one that you've just come back from Singapore and you started in Bangkok.
Yeah, that's like Rachel's just giving me a really good point. So I just come back to the US from Japan, and those videos are coming in the next couple of weeks. And I wanted to fly on ANA's business class to do a video on them. I wanted to do it for a while. But to fly from Tokyo to San Francisco is ridiculous money. They wanted like $8,000 one way in business class. If you fly from Bangkok on ANA and then connect in Tokyo, it's like $1,400. So what did I do? I got on a flight from Tokyo to Bangkok with Zip Air, or a low-cost airline, spent 7 hours overnight in Bangkok and just flew straight back to Tokyo and then connected through and came back that way. It saved me thousands of the price of the flight. You just sometimes have to look at, over time you sort of figure out where's the cheapest places to sort of look at. They change periodically as well. Fly Talk's a brilliant place to start, honestly, because you can see so many good deals come up on there that you wouldn't even think about, like city connections that people have found, and it gives you a good sort of idea of where you can get quite cheaply. So, yes?
So now that you're a U.S. resident, do you plan on doing a lot more flying within North America, United States, Canada, Alaska?
Absolutely. To be honest, it's one of the reasons we actually moved over to the US in terms of the business side of things for us, because I can do so much stuff here without even leaving the country. As a matter of fact, we're actually planning for a trip in November. I'm going up to Alaska. Again, early stages at the minute, speaking to a couple of airlines, because there's a couple of flights that I'm doing in Canada as well, who are not generally open to the public. It's like cargo airlines and things. I'm sort of trying to get a few bits out there. Nothing confirmed yet, but we're working on it. But a trip like that, that's going to be a trip I do in November, and it's going to get me probably a few months worth of content, and I'm only going to be like in the same time zone or a couple of hours different, which is a massive like difference. And yeah, so yeah, I'm trying to do more of it over here. I've got a bit of an idea that I started doing like the least used airport in each state, which I started doing a while ago. When there wasn't much content to be had, and I said, what can I do? What can I do to try and get some videos when you can't travel anywhere? And that was one of the things I sort of came up with doing that. And they're cool as well, because you get to go and fly on these essential air service routes, basically, out to the middle of nowhere. I flew to Alliance, Nebraska, which was just one of my absolute favourite things I've ever done. The main reason was to fly on the metro liner, let's face it, and I got to fly on this metro liner out to Alliance, and then I land there thinking, right, I'll just grab an Uber into town. Alliance, Nebraska doesn't have Uber. And I was like, okay, I'll grab a taxi then. She's like, what do you mean? Like, can you call me a taxi maybe? She's like, we don't have a taxi service here in Alliance. Like, there's one guy who drives a van around town, and that's called like taxi. I'm like, this was proper remote. I had no idea how remote some parts of America could be until I went to Alliance. But anyway, this guy who was sat next to me on the plane, he was like, he said, oh, do you want to ride into town to your hotel? I was like, if you go in, I'd really appreciate that. He goes, yeah. And he got a Polaris out the back, little like, four-wheeler thing. And he said, yeah, just hop in the back. So I hopped in the back. There's a massive gun there, straight across the back. And I'm like, so this person from the UK, this is like the most random thing. And he drove me all the way into town. And then his friend, his dad, Lanny, his name was, and he called me, he's like, yeah, do you want to come and I'll show you all around the town of Alliance, Nebraska, and they've got this thing called Carhenge, which is like a load of cars like appended. And he showed me around, he showed me all their grain elevators that they've got there. Riveters. But absolutely amazing. We went for a drink together. He turned around to me and he goes, oh, we had a couple here from England a couple of years ago. We had a British couple come to us. Do you know them? Bob and Carol from London. Actually, as a matter of fact, no, I don't. Yeah, but those sorts of things for me, that spending that time there in that little town, it could have been a really dull sort of, let's just go and fly on a metro liner, but you get to see these really cool, incredible places, and that's, yeah, I'm looking forward to doing a ton more of that now we're actually living here in the States. Any more?
I think that's you.
There's a lot. It's for 3 o'clock, I think, as well. So we got one more.
All right, I'll make it quick then. Thank you for all this. I also have to pay to get into Cairo last year. Interesting. In your journey from AppGeek to AppGeek storyteller, what wisdom or advice can you share about telling the stories of these trips?
Thank you. Again, amazing question. And that is one of the things I've learned, and I suppose it's the thing I'll leave you all with, is like starting to do this sort of thing. You have to have the story. And that's the thing that I wish I'd have known at the beginning, that I didn't. And one thing that I learned really is you've got to have this whole story. When they write a Hollywood movie, there's like this thing called a story arc, and you have, Google it, there's like pictures of it online, how it all works. You have the whole build-up, then you have like the setback sort of 2/3 of the way through the movie. It's a typical sort of rom-com stories that a couple gets together, fall in love, then they have a big argument, and they get back together again, and then it ends. And that's how every story needs to go. And you think, how can you apply that to making videos about planes? But effectively, you've got to have that sort of in your mind when you do it. And some of the videos I do now, I actually do them with the purpose of, I know there's going to be, I don't know what's actually going to happen, but I know that there is going to be that story there. Flying around the world in 80 hours, I start off, yes, it's going to be a fantastic trip. And it's good, and then you get more and more tired and more tired. And there's a point at which you're about ready to break. But then you get on the flight home at the end of it, and it's like, yes, we're going home at the end of it. And there's a story there, and you might not see it. There's somebody who's doing the video, but being conscious of that as you're making the videos, and you can apply that to anything you do. Whether you're making videos of unboxing gadgets, or whether you're making videos of flying on planes around the world, there's always a story there, and people like stories, and I think that's probably the sort of biggest tip that I give anybody really who's looking to do this.
Thank you.